All right, geez, just straight in.
Yeah, come on. Oh, straight in. 2024 has been a very good year for mountain bike products. We're going to dive into what we think, me and him, are the most interesting products of the year so far. In non-numerical order, let's start with number one though.
Okay, what's number one?
Pademelon steering damper. So we have seen steering dampers in the 90s on the downhill circuit at least, but this is a new product from a guy called Jeremiah Bubar, if you know, was in the black box program for RockShox. So a guy with a lot of experience in suspension development has invented this new product.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like worked with Hopi and redeveloped it and put in more of his new IP that he's developed himself. And effectively it is a steering damper. What's really exciting for me is we've seen Canyon also release and put it into a whole range of bikes.
Steering stabiliser, they're calling that, which is a much more simple version where it just straightens the bars. It's been released on the Spectral. I saw in Leger on the cross-country race bikes, but also the e-bikes. So they are bringing it to a lot of their bikes.
Yeah, and I think Troy and Luca have been running it on their downhill bikes too. So I think it's really interesting that two brands have come in different directions to create something that seems to help in a really similar space. So yeah, you've tried the Kiss, but I really want to try Pademelon. It does feel good.
It's supposed to help with, bikes have got slacker, so you have this wheel flop.
Okay, yeah.
And particularly I've heard on off-camber situations, the steering damper can be really good if you're hitting things. And actually the Pademelon has a damping effect to 35 degrees steering, and then it opens up so that it's freer if you're doing something like a super tight switchback.
Okay, nice.
I've seen Jack Moyer running with these. I've seen a few racers running these on their bikes. So yeah, we'll see what the future holds for these steering dampers. We have a bike up next, the Nicolai G1 GPI. So Nicolai were pretty much the first brand really to move into the longer, lower slacker. I remember their bikes looking pretty wild to begin with.
Yeah.
Don't look so wild now, but also a big believer in bike adjustability, so they have mutators and flip chips to make some of the most rider tunable bikes out there. Yeah,
they've got flip chips on chainstay, top of the seat stay, and then you can move where the shock is, and the shock will have different mounts. So I think the G1 you can have and changing shocks as well, and some of the shock hardware. You can make it from, I feel like it's something as low as 140 up to maybe 190. There's loads of adjustment. But this one takes it to another level in the fact that you've got this Nicolai sort of famous, burly, welded aluminium frame. This is a newer version, so it does look slightly different. I quite like the new aesthetic. But this one has now got Pinion's Smart Shift gearbox on, which we've seen on a few e-bikes before, but I think for me, this is the first time I've ever seen it on a normal MTB and with a belt drive. My understanding is you can get it with a belt drive and the Pinion gearbox, or with a chain in the Pinion gearbox. But for me, I think, belt drive, gearbox, I think it's got to be a future, hasn't it? It's a big future trend.
We always talk about gearboxes. For eternity we shall, until we're all running them. But the one downside we've heard is efficiency. But if you're talking gravity-assisted bike, where you maybe not going to see this on a cross-country bike, but a bike like this, it could suit a lot of people, I think. Yeah,
I think it'd be really fun. What are your opinions on gearboxes? Should we all be running them? Is it actually the future? Is it here already?
And if you're going to buy a Nicolai G1, which one would you choose?
Great shout, yeah.
It's an e-bike, but we have to talk about it. The Amflow DJI eMTB has sort of lit up the e-mountain bike world. And it is a very interesting machine because it is a lightweight e-bike that is very powerful. It's not just full power, it's more than full power, I would say. Yep. So it's 105 Newton meters, but also you can have 120 Newton meters boost for 30 seconds only, which is definitely an unusual feature as well. But it's the most unusual thing is we've seen big brands come. We've seen the Ford Mustang and Bronco e-bikes
recently. Yeah, they're real lookers.
I have some history with DJI. I've got a drone, and it's a brilliant machine.
Okay, yeah.
So to see someone like DJI jump into the bike world, be it mountain bike or e-bike, well, particularly e-bike, I suppose, because they're known for building very small, very powerful motors.
Yeah.
And the software, the motor, and the battery is feeling next level on this e-mountain bike, and it's under 20 kilograms for a bike that has double the power of some of the lightweight e-bikes.
I think it's a combination, isn't it? It's really exciting to see someone coming into the mountain bike space and really going, right, cool, we're not just going to go to a catalogue, we're not going to go to another brand, we're going to develop everything, almost everything, the suspension is sort of normal, everything ourselves and make it, just better than everybody else's benchmarks. It's so impressive.
That is probably, you're right, that's the most impressive bit. It's a proper bike. It's got Amflow branded wheels and bars and stem that look really good.
Yeah,
but it's got everything you'd expect. It's got exactly the right angles. It's 150mm travel, 160. It's got flip chips. You can run a mixed wheel size setup. They have thought about it. They've ticked all the boxes here. So we're going to see how this disrupts the off-road world.
More from that, I'm sure.
From one end of the spectrum to the other, we have the Vittoria Terreno Pro T60 mixed tyres, which are gravel tyres. But the really interesting thing about this is the way they're built. They showed these off the Taipei Cycle Show, and they're made from 92% sustainable and recycled materials. And this could change tyres for everybody, not just gravel, but for mountain bikers, e-bikers, road cyclists. And it would be amazing if we could make tyres a greener product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think what I find really interesting is that they've literally kind of gone piece by piece in terms of all the parts. So we've got a cotton casing which is reinforced in nylon, but the nylon's coming from recycled fishing nets. The reason why it's the colour it is not because of any kind of aesthetic choice. It's just that's the kind of colour it is if they don't add the carbon black, but it's still grippy.
Soybean oil to bond materials, along with rice husks as part of the compound that improves durability of tyres. And the interesting thing is that they say there's no compromises here. They say they're 10% better rolling resistance, 10% more grip, 10% better ride comfort, and 34% better sidewall puncture resistance.
Those are big claims, aren't they? I'm looking forward to it. I think more sort of like, greening, thinking about the long term of how mountain biking can grow and grow in sustainable ways. Really, really good idea, I think. Like it.
RockShox Flight Attendant, whilst not completely new for 24, it's had a big year because we've seen it expand to the downhill world. Previous to that, it was Lobrini, I think, was the only rider on the circuit. You had Olin's electronic suspension lockout. Then we had RockShox show up, Valley Hall, Lucas Shaw, just a couple of riders who had very good times.
And Troy. It was really interesting. I think all three of them, you could see, and sort of Loic as well, where they had this electronic system on certain tracks where there were sort of flatter sections or really different characteristics of track. Those people had a real advantage. It was really interesting.
I went back to Fort William and paused the motorways, the backside of those jumps, and see how deep they went in the suspension. It's crazy how different it was for those riders.
Interesting.
And does that mean extra pump? Anyway, so we've had it in cross country. You can't buy the downhill ones yet, but you can now buy a range. We've got the Pikes, the Lyrics, the Zeb Forks. You have Super Deluxe, Vivid Ultimate, and Vivid Coil Shock, all now on the market, available with RockShox Flight Attendant.
Exciting stuff. Okay, I saw a prototype last year at the Worlds, and this year we saw a more prototype production one, now under Greg Minnaert, and that's the new Norco DH Proto.
Yeah, I think...
Very interesting.
And the story behind it as well, Greg Minnaert, the GOAT, the greatest downhill mountain biker of all time, won the most World Cups.
Male mountain biker of all time.
Sorry, yes, very true, good correction. He was riderless this winter. He basically set up his own team, went to Norco, and basically got this bike, got this team put together. Obviously, you've got Lucas Cruiser, Grace Hemstreet as well, also riding this bike. I love seeing prototype kit and also the things they have to do to it during the season. It's pretty incredible, the sort of the story they've been through to get this bike there already. But it's a 6-link rear suspension, flip chips on both ends of the shock. It's changed linkage rate without altering the starting ratio.
Yeah.
And then you can tweak the idler to also change the anti-squat characteristics. I mean, where I would get lost pretty quickly.
I think that's why they did it. Chatting to some of the mechanics and kind of race engineers at Fort William was fascinating because they wanted to have a bike that they could adjust things like wheelbase on and bottom bracket height. But on any other bike, when you start playing around with where that point is and where the kind of ride height of the bike is, you start to change where the suspension sits within that sort of spring rate and spring curve. And with this, they can change it all independently. So I guess there's other bikes out there that might be more radical in terms of how they look, but this is really adjustable, and they can just adjust these key metrics to make a better bike for on the trail and elsewhere. So it's interesting.
We've seen downhill bikes really jumping on the sort of rider adjustability, and I love it. Being able to choose what wheel size, what linkage ratio, how big the reach is brilliant, I think.
Yeah.
So I think I'd love to see those features come to the consumer model if they do make it, but I don't know yet.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because it's something we started to see with a few brands, and Norco, I guess, are one of the first that have done it, but others are out there too. And that's we've had this season of slacker and steeper seat angles, slacker head angles, and now I think a lot of people are going, well, where do we go? We've got trail bikes or long travel bikes, as slack as downhill bikes, and it is that custom fit. So changing kinematics, changing chainstay lengths, so we're not just having longer front ends, but the whole bike geometry is changing. It's really interesting.
And for me, I'm a downhill fan. I love seeing another big manufacturer in the downhill world, and I'm hearing rumours of another big one who's never had a downhill bike jumping in, which I think is really exciting.
Interesting. Okay, this is a little bit random and it's a bit of a segue, but I think it's really exciting. So it is the SRAM, and I've got to look because the name is a bit weird, the S1000
It's a Honda.
Axis T-Type group set.
Yeah.
I know, not that exciting initially, but what it is an OEM, so that's original equipment for manufacturers. So if you're, let's say, or Bayer, and you're buying a new group set for brands, you will go directly to SRAM and you've got a different list of components than we, the consumers, have. And this is a new, lower price point product of their new T-Type group set.
Gotcha.
It's really good. It means that it's going to bring this wireless shifting to lots more people. And I've got to say, I was really skeptical about T-Type because it is more expensive and it's more electronics, it's an extra battery to charge. But annoyingly, now I've been lucky enough to ride one a lot, oh God, it's so good.
Yeah.
It doesn't miss a beat, ever. It's so good.
It is super smooth as well, isn't it? So, yeah I didn't know about it. So thanks for enlightening me.
Yeah, there we go. What are your thoughts on electronic group sets? Are they the future? Are they amazing? What do you think? Let us know.
Next, we're talking helmet industry standards, which probably doesn't sound that interesting, but actually, tougher helmets has got to be a good thing. And we are seeing more helmets conforming to the NTA 8776 standard, which is a Dutch standard designed for helmets being used with e-bikes. The Smith Payroll and the Bluegrass Jetro helmets are two great examples of helmets that have got this certification. Great examples of basically really solid helmets that are passing this certification, and that should be good for all of us, really.
Yeah, I think I had to research this because when I saw the NTA 8776, I've got to be honest, I was a bit stumped. But essentially, new testing standard, you'd be like, how are they testing it differently? Effectively, it's just that they go, okay, e-bikes, and I think this is specifically for the kind of speed pedelecs that you can get in Europe, the ones that go over 25 k's an hour. But for us mountain bikers, it's actually better if you're kind of going higher speed. Having a helmet that's tested to a higher speed standard, it is going to offer more protection. I think it's a really good thing.
Next, the Pinarello Dogma XC. Whilst we saw them last year under Tom Pidcock and Pauline Ferrand-Perot, I should remember those names. They're quite successful names. We saw it released to the public this year, and young Tom P won the Olympics on this very bike.
Well, and what's ace is PFP then won on the hardtail.
She did.
So it's pretty incredible. I don't know any other brand that's been able to win both Olympic medals at the same race.
No, surely not.
No, I don't think anyone has. So, yeah, looks aside, it must be really good. I think in the right paint job, it'd look brilliant.
I find it quite annoying they use the Dogma XC but the same name for the full suspension and the hardtail bikes.
Yeah.
But there you go. But this is like, don't come cheap. The full suspension frame and shock will set you back £5,300, and the top spec build comes in about 12 grand.
Yeah, it's quite steep. Yeah. But the geometry is quite modern now, so it's only the pricing that's steep. And lots of asymmetric technology in there, which is something they've used on their road bikes for a long, long time, actually.
Yeah,
probably a couple of decades.
I looked at it at Seattle. It almost looks a bit organic.
Yeah, I think it does. The hardtail especially, it's interesting. Clearly a winning bike.
Anything else interesting from 24, Owen?
Okay, it's pretty nerdy. And I think it's important. In mountain biking, we've got lots of standards, and one thing that stayed essentially the same is that we've had two valves, and that's it. And loads of people prefer Presta over Schrader. It is always going to be a battle, Do battle in the comments. We love hearing which is your favourite valve. But this year we've had 2 new valves come out. And both of them are really interesting. So Stan's have got their Exo Core, which uses just a normal pump, but they've got loads more airflow. It's got a brass inner. You can take it apart. And I think what they've tried to do is get more airflow and less risk of clogging. I think it's really interesting.
New valves.
Yeah.
You could have just said no. There aren't no more interesting things this year.
Yeah, no, but there are, because also Schwalbe's got one called a click valve, which does use a different valve, but you can get loads of adapters. And again, they've tried to set out to make something that's easy to fit, easy to click on, hence the name, catchy, and also doesn't gum up. I mean, yeah, are valves exciting for you? Do you think they're the future? New valves? I feel like we've got some resistance here. I feel like you out there might be the same. Regular valves okay?
Jump into the comments if you think we've missed anything massive that you think was the most interesting release of 24. And we've got time yet. We can maybe do part 2.
Oh, we should. Definitely. Excellent.
All right.